What up, dog? This is Caleb Jones. This is the Alpha Male 2.0 podcast. I make a multi-six-figure location-independent income while dating multiple attractive women, and I teach men like you how to do the same thing. And today we're going to talk about, does your notch count matter? Is it something you should focus on? Is it important? Is it not important? Is it semi-important? Before I get into that, I have to let you know I have another podcast I do every week just like this one. It's called the Sovereign CEO Podcast, and that's where I cover all the Alpha Male 2.0 business aspects. So location-dependent income, building your business, moving out of your country to a less bad country, international stuff, all that stuff I cover on that podcast. So all you have to do is go to calebjones.com and click podcast at the top of the screen, and I'm on all the usual platforms, plus at YouTube. So just be aware of that. If you're listening to this podcast and you're only listening to this podcast, you should listen to my other podcast because Sovereign CEO is a subset of Alpha Male 2.0. So if Alpha Male 2.0, if that's a lifestyle you're interested in, you should be also consuming all the Sovereign CEO content as well. Sovereign CEO is only for guys who have no interest in woman stuff or lifestyle stuff. They just want to move out of their countries and or build a business. That's it. But that's probably not you if you're listening to this content. So subscribe to the other podcast. Notch count. Boy, do I have a lot to say about this. God damn, this is a big topic. What is notch count? If you don't know what notch count means, that is the total number of women you've had sex with in your life. And we could get into a weird esoteric discussion about what counts as a notch. If you get a blowjob, does that count as having sex? You know, if you're both naked together in bed, but you don't actually go in there, does that count? I'm not going to have that discussion. I think it's kind of irrelevant. But that's what notch count means. Is notch count important? In the pickup artist world that I come out of, and in some aspects of the red pill world, but mostly not, that is considered sort of a badge of honor. The more women you've had sex with, the cooler you are, and or the more people should listen to you. And I remember back when I was the pickup artist world, there was all kinds of arguments on forums about, well, no one should listen to you because you've only had sex with 42 women. And I've had sex with 87 women, therefore I know more than you. Or, you know, some guy who had sex with, you know, over 100 women or 200 women or what have you. And yes, these are all self-reported numbers. Who knows? Would be making fun of guys saying, oh, no one should listen to you. You've only had sex with, 36 women, but I've had sex with over 100, so I know more about women than you do, so you need to shut the fuck up. People should listen to me. There's a lot of these kinds of arguments back then. It's kind of funny, kind of hilarious. One of the downsides of that world was there were a lot of very immature guys and a lot of young guys. And so notch count was a really, really big deal about this. For many years, guys like Roosh would constantly talk about notch count, notch count, notch count, notch count, get more notches, blah, 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 right? And of course, you know what happened to him. When you go too far in one direction, you snap back in the other opposite, just as bad direction. Anyway, so first let's talk about notch count as a goal. Actually, you know what? Before we talk about that, let's get the elephant out of the room. What is my notch count? So I have said repeatedly many times, I wrote an entire article about this at my blogs, that I will never ever publicly state my notch count. I don't even like that word. It's so immature sounding, but fine, I'll call it notch count. I have never stated publicly my notch count. And the reason for that is there's a lot of reasons, but the primary reason for that is, again, I came out of that world. I know what happens to guys when they give the number of women they've been with. If I gave that number out right now for the next 10 years of my life, I would be arguing with haters and nitpickers. I would have people who would say I was lying, saying that was, oh, you haven't been with that many women. That's bullshit. I also would have some men saying I was lying the other way, saying, oh, you've actually been with more women than that. You're just downplaying that because you don't want to offend people in your other companies outside of this Alpha Male 2.0 stuff. So bullshit. And I'd have guys say, well, wait a minute, you got to prove it. You got to show photographs, blah, 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 blah. And moreover, this would be going on forever. So 10 years from now, there would be haters and or nitpickers and or morons quoting the number I gave 10 years ago, stating it as if it was current, when in fact it grows every year because most of us have sex with new women every year. So it doesn't stay the same every year. And why do I know this would happen? Because I've seen this happen numerous times with other guys. When they state their notch counts, all they do is they create an argument that never ends. So I'd rather just say, you figure it out, you guess. My notch count is significant as compared to the typical man. It's quite significant. But That's not because I ever set a goal to go have sex with a lot of women. That has literally never been my objective. Not once, not ever, even when I was younger. My objective when I entered into the Alpha Male 2.0 world back in 2007 in my mid-30s was, and I've said this many times, to get to the point where I could have an ongoing sexual relationship with at least three women, if not more. All the women knew I was having sex with all the other women, and they stayed with me anyway, and they didn't bitch and moan about it. That was my objective. And I hit that objective within about, 2-3 years after setting that goal. So I've been living that lifestyle for a long time. So 2007, I hit that goal by around 2009, 2010 at the latest, I think. And so that was a long time ago. So yeah. So that was my goal. It was never to have sex with lots of women. But I've been non-monogamous now for what? Let's see. Let's figure out the math. 2007. It's now 2022. And it was early 2007. So it was February of 2027. As I make this recording, it is January of 2022. So what's the math on that? 15 years. So I have been non-monogamous. I've lived a non-monogamous, sexually active lifestyle for 15 years with no monogamy, not once, and no dry spells, not once. Unlike a lot of guys, my pickup artist friends, they go through a lot of dry spells. They go through months and months and months. They don't have sex with anybody. What the fuck are you doing? Anyway, so I've never had any dry spells the past 15 years. I've never done any monogamy the past 15 years. So my numbers naturally going to rack up. You end up racking up decent numbers when you live that lifestyle for 15 years straight. So it's not like I add a bunch of new women per year. I don't, not anymore. I used to. I still do because I do a lot of traveling. But that's really it. So my notch count is quite significant. It is still less than a hardcore pickup artist, thrill of the hunt, night game guy who's out banging 20, 30, 40 new women a year and been doing that for years and years on end. There are plenty of guys in the pickup artist world, not many in the red pill world, but maybe one or two who definitely exceed my numbers. But again, this has never been my objective. So that's the deal on mine. Moving on. Is increasing your notch count or getting a notch count, a particular notch count, a valid objective? Occasionally I run into young guys. When I ask them what their goals are, they say their goal is to have sex with 100 girls. A notch count with 100. Okay. I think that's stupid. I think it is childish. I think it is useless. I think it's an ego thing. I don't think that it is a valid goal to have. Now, that's my opinion. I can never tell you what your goals will be. I'm an individualist. If having sex with 100 women would make you really, 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 really happy for many, many decades, and you could walk around saying, yee-hoo, I fucked 100 girls, great, then go ahead and do that. That's fine. As someone whose notch count is, I can tell you when you hit certain numbers, it's not a big deal. You don't go, oh, wow, I'm so awesome. I hit this number. I hit 100. I hit 90, I hit 50, 100, 150. It's not a big deal. It really isn't. It's like, okay, great. Who's next on the list? It's not a big thing. So I don't think that setting a specific notch count objective is a good idea, but I could think of scenarios where it would be a good idea. So let me talk about this. In my experience, working with and talking to many woman-experienced men, many men who have had sex with lots of women, either dated lots of women like I have, or in more cases, had sex with lots and lots of girls. And watching them talk and watching them give advice and speaking to many of these men myself. I've come up with a number that, and this is something new. I've had this number in my head for a long time. I mentioned this many years ago at the Pickup Artist Forums many years ago. A number where once you cross this notch count, you are at least someone I would consider an expert in getting laid. And that number is 30. So let me explain that. If you've had sex with over 30 women, and let's assume it's within a reasonably compressed time span, it didn't take you 50 years to have sex with 30 women, then no. But if you took a few years of your life and you had sex with 30 women, I think you have something to teach other men about the process of pickup, dating, having sex, getting laid. I think you have something to teach. I think someone who has had sex with 82 women, who looks at the guy who's had sex with 35 women and says, you don't know anything, no one should listen to your advice, I disagree with that. Back in the olden days, I learned from guys who had had sex with 35 women, 42 women, and yes, I learned from some guys who had sex with 100 women or 200 women plus. Yeah, they both had something to teach. Now, the corollary to that is that if you've had sex with less than 30 women, I think you should shut the fuck up. And I think you shouldn't give advice. I think you shouldn't be on Discord groups, Reddit, Facebook groups, giving guys advice on how to get pussy when you yourself have not had sex with at least 30 women. And I have seen a lot of this. Matter of fact, I will tell you a very funny story from when I first went into the pickup artist world around 2008 or so. I went on the pickup artist forums, and that's a story in and of itself. I'll tell that story later. But I was on the pickup artist forums, and I started listening to guys' advice, and I wasn't aware of this. I didn't know that some guys giving advice had barely had sex with any women, and some guys giving advice had sex with a lot of women. And so I was trying to figure out how to handle an upcoming date, a first date or a second date, I forget what it was. And a particular individual, who I will not name, gave me a bunch of very technical advice. He's like, okay, here's what you got to do. What you got to do is, and I had a logistical problem. He goes, what you got to do is, you got to do a hotel close, and get her to a hotel. Okay, you got to get her to, and you can find the nearest hotel, and here's what you say, and here's the scripts you use. And he sounded very authoritative. I went, oh, okay, cool. That sounds, okay, good. And he was on a pickup artist forum, so I figured he was really experienced because he had all these techniques and scripts, and he had all this stuff in his head, right? So I said, okay, cool. I didn't know any better. Long story short, I tried that on that date and it completely blew up in my face. It made the woman fucking hate me. I did not get laid and I completely fucked it up doing exactly what he told me. I found out several months later, this guy had had sex with 5 women in his entire life. This was far less than the number of women I had already had sex with up until that point. I vastly outnumbered this guy. And this guy was giving me advice on how to get laid. So, over 30, I think, is okay. Under 30, you need to consider the source. And as a matter of fact, I would advise you guys, when you're getting detailed advice from some random idiot or anonymous person on the internet, it doesn't matter if you're on Reddit, Facebook group, Discord, doesn't matter where you are, and the guy's giving you all advice like he knows what he's talking about, you need to ask him how many women he's fucked and see what he says. Now, could he lie? Of course he could lie. But at least you need to start somewhere. Be very careful about this. If the number is over 30, probably okay. If the number is under 30, ignore everything he's saying and say thank you very much for your advice and move on. So that's where I think notch count is kind of helpful in terms of this 30. Now, maybe the number isn't 30. Maybe the number is 40. Maybe it's 25. I don't know what the exact number is. I just came up with an estimate of 30 when I watched people give advice. Guys who had sex with 12 girls would give some advice. Guys who had sex with like 40 girls would give some advice, and I could see there was a definite difference. But I didn't see a lot of difference between a guy who had sex with 40 women and a guy who had sex with 130 women. I didn't see a lot of difference. They were both helpful and they were both useful. Now, let's flip the script a little bit and let's talk about, is having a high notch count good or bad? So the typical red pill, right-wingish, traditionalist, somewhat conservative argument that I have heard over the years is, if women have a high notch count, that is bad and wrong and terrible, and you should never date someone like that. But if men have a high notch count, it's perfectly fine. Nothing bad will ever happen to you. And they go on to talk about, you know, sperm and psychology, and they try to, you know, they back up this with all kinds of science, quote unquote. Sometimes it's accurate, sometimes it's not. So how does all that work? So here's how this works. Is it true? The answer is only to a point. Let me explain. I have looked at these exact studies that show that if a woman has had sex with more than, you know, if a woman has sex with 50 men or 100 men or 80 men or 30 men, then she will make a terrible girlfriend or wife, and you should go for a woman who is a virgin or had sex with 2 or 3 guys. I have analyzed some of those studies actually in some of my books, including The Unchained Man. And basically what it shows is women who have had sex with up to 15 men are basically statistically identical. There's no major difference. So if a woman has had sex with 3 guys, 0 guys, 14 guys, statistically speaking, she's about the same. There's no real difference. And a lot of these red pillish, more right-wingish guys would say, oh no, she's fucked 11 guys. No, that's bad. Her notch count is too high. I got to go marry a virgin. I could never date someone who's had sex with 11 people. So you're statistically and factually incorrect. It's about the same. Now, when you get up into the big fucking numbers, when a woman has had sex with 50, 60, 70 guys versus a woman who has had sex with 9 or 10, then you do see some differences in terms of their ability to maintain a long-term relationship and things of that nature. Now, let me rewind really quick before I go on with that. Alpha Male 2.0 means FB's MLTR, OLTR. When you're dating at the MLTR or FB level, it shouldn't matter how many women she's been with. There's too many guys on the internet who are really concerned about a woman's notch count on the first date or the second date, or they see this woman 2 weeks. It doesn't fucking matter. You're not going to marry this goddamn woman. This woman could probably just be an FB. Do you care how many women an FB has fucked? No. Do I care? No. Matter of fact, in some cases, I kind of like it if she's had sex with a lot of guys. If she's an FB, because she's experienced and knows what she's doing in bed. Wonderful. Do you care a lot about how many men a woman has been with if she's an MLTR? Not a girlfriend, not someone you're going to move in and have your children. An MLTR, someone you're dating, and you're probably dating other women. Not really. I don't give a shit. Now, when she finally graduates to the OLTR, then if you really want to, and I don't, but if you really want to, then you can use that as a factor in terms of whether or not she should be your full-on girlfriend. But I keep repeating this over and over again. There is this weird, bizarre paradigm around dating advice for men, where on the first date, you should be aware of how quality this woman is, or else you shouldn't have sex with her. No, make her an FB. If you don't like her, she's fucked 700 men, then make her an FB. Fine, wear a good condom, please. You should do that anyway. So stupid. Stop treating every woman you meet, or every woman you have sex with, or every woman you go on a date with, or every woman you meet up with as a potential wife. That's not how this fucking works. I talk about the cream of the crop model in my books. You date and or have sex with a chunk of women, a bunch of women, and the best one rises from the group organically. That is how I found my wife. I didn't look around looking for a wife. I didn't go on a first date with a 19-year-old and ask her a bunch of checklist stuff about how good of a wife she would be. That's fucking stupid. That, by the way, that's what women do. That's what women over 33 do. That's what provider hunter women do. You want to be a chick? No. So get off this thing about notch count really matters. Notch count only matters maybe if she's at the OLTR level. And that takes years to get to in terms of your experience level. You got to date a lot of women to find one who's qualified for OLTR. So at that point, maybe you could ask her those questions or use that as a factor. Until then, it doesn't fucking matter. God damn. And I will repeat, statistically speaking, if the number of men she's been with is somewhere under 20, it doesn't really matter even then. It doesn't really matter, and the statistics bear this out. It only matters when the number gets really high, 50, 60, 70 guys. Then yes, you see some stuff. But that stuff doesn't matter unless she's your full-on girlfriend, not when you're dating her or hooking up with her, having fun with her. So now let's talk about men, because this narrative says if a woman fucks 100 men, she's trash. You shouldn't go anywhere near her. But if a man fucks 100 women, he's perfect. There's nothing wrong with this guy. Proceed, my brother. No, I've discussed this many times. When you get to the point where you've had sex with lots of women, it eliminates your ability to be long-term monogamous. Let me say that again. I want you to understand this. When you get to the point where you've had sex with lots of girls, lots and lots of women, certainly 30 plus, you are now permanently incapable, you, not the woman, you are permanently incapable of long-term monogamy. You will never, ever, 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 ever be able to settle down with a woman and not cheat on her. Okay? And I have seen this happen in the pickup artist world, the manosphere world, the red pill world, many scores. That means in the 20s, multiples of 20 times, where these guys who bang a lot of chicks thinking it'll be no problem, I can bang all the girls I want. And like typical men, like typical alpha male 1.0s or beta males, they eventually get one-itis. They eventually want to settle down when they cross over age 35. They eventually get a girlfriend, or they move in with someone, or God forbid they get married and have kids. It's fine for a while, and then they cheat. Or in some cases, they try to open up the relationship, but because they're not alpha male 2.0s, they do it completely wrong and they fuck everything up. Then they break up, they get divorced, they have all kinds of chaos and problems in their lives. And during the whole time they were fucking hundreds of women, they thought that would be perfectly fine. So it's not perfectly fine if your goal someday is monogamy. And with most of these red pillish guys who say you shouldn't fuck a girl who's fucked too many men, that is their goal. Their goal, or at least in their subconscious, is to at some point when they get older to settle down, not legally marry, but settle down with a woman in a monogamous type of arrangement. You will never be able to do that once you've had sex with lots of girls. I am fundamentally incapable of ever having a long-term monogamous relationship. I've had sex with too many women. My brain is now wired for variety in a way that the beta male who's fucked 4 women hasn't. And I know what I can do. That's the other aspect of this. When you have had sex with lots of women, especially if a lot of them are attractive, you now know what you're capable of. So if you settle for one girl, even if she's the most beautiful woman on earth, your brain is always saying, well, I can go get more. I can get more whenever I want because I've done it. The beta male, the total pussy, the total simp, who's had sex with 3, 4, 5 average looking girls, doesn't have that. So believe it or not, the simp, who all these master guys make fun of, is actually more capable of long-term monogamy than the quote-unquote tough guy who's fucked 87 women. Now, it's going to be very difficult for that simp to get a girlfriend, but that's a topic for another time. My point is, he's more capable and you are less capable. So if your goal, and with a lot of you it is, unfortunately, and a lot of red pill guys it is, unfortunately, if your goal down the road is to somehow settle down in some sort of monogamous arrangement or relationship, then it does hurt you, quote-unquote, to have sex with lots of women. It does hurt you. If you don't believe me, try it. Go fuck 100 women and then go settle down in a 100% monogamous marriage or relationship where you live with a woman and have kids. I give you 4 years before you have an explosion in that relationship. Because you will cheat, or you will try to cheat, or you will try to open things up and do it wrong, and you'll fuck it all up. Because you have now established in your head a precedent for sexual variety and sexual abundance, which is the opposite of monogamy, which is one of the many reasons why long-term monogamy doesn't fucking work. Make sense? Now, fortunately for us alpha male 2.0s, we will never be monogamous. So when we have sex with lots of women, it doesn't hurt us. See, isn't this cool? This is another beauty of being an alpha male 2.0. When you're the typical red pill guy, having sex with lots of girls will hurt you eventually because your eventual goal, stupidly, is to attempt some kind of serious monogamous relationship when you get older. But when you're an alpha male 2.0, you're never going to do monogamy. The closest you're ever going to get is what I have. We have an OLTR marriage, a non-monogamous marriage. You'll settle down with a woman. She's your wife or live-in girlfriend, and you're hooking up with that beast on the side. That's what I have. And that's what I will always have for the rest of my life. The number of women on the side will decrease. That's what I want. But I will never be monogamous. But that's okay. And that's what I've always wanted. So when I was out having sex with lots and lots and lots and lots of women, there was no interior conflict about this. Like guys like Roosh have had and other guys you've seen in the manosphere world where they have this inner guilt. I mean, Neil Strauss ran into this. They fuck a lot of girls, but they have this inner guilt like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. I don't have any of that because I'm not some religious traditional guy. I'm not some alpha male 1.0 traditionalist red pill guy. I'm alpha 2.0. I'm never going to be monogamous. I never want to be monogamous. So therefore I can do whatever I want and it won't hurt me in terms of having sex with lots of women. Isn't that nice? Isn't that cool? Another benefit and yet another advantage of being an alpha male 2.0. You can do whatever you want in your sex life, as long as you wear condoms, and you're okay. It doesn't fuck you up mentally, doesn't fuck you up psychologically, doesn't fuck you up spiritually, because you don't have all this SP and guilt about, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Now, let me cover one more aspect of this. Is there a maximum notch count? Is there a point at which you can have sex with too many women? Is there a point at which a super high notch count becomes dysfunctional? Well, the answer is not exactly. You can become dysfunctional sexually when you become a sex addict or when it becomes something that starts damaging the rest of your life. So I will use 2 celebrity examples because those are people you guys know. I will compare Gene Simmons with Tiger Woods. So these are both big celebrities. These are both men who have fucked hundreds, if not thousands of women. And in one scenario, it helped him and enhanced his life and made him a happy guy, Gene Simmons. At least the Gene Simmons prior to 2011 when he surrendered to monogamy, story for another time. But that Gene Simmons was very happy with it, had no real problem with it. Then you had Tiger Woods, okay, who was doing this incorrectly. Gene Simmons, up until 2011, had a non-monogamous OLTR marriage very similar to mine. So he had a woman he cared about, he had children, but when he went out on the road, he banged tons of women, and it worked fine until he pussed out when he got older. Story for another time. But it worked for him. It didn't make him sad. It didn't make him happy. It didn't fuck up his life. He was perfectly fine with it. No problem. At least no major problems. Let's say there are some things that Gene Simmons did that I wouldn't have done that he could have done a little better. I could critique Gene Simmons. And if you want, I could do a whole podcast on Gene Simmons or these other celebrities if you want. Let me know. But while he was out having sex with tons of girls, you had Tiger Woods. What was Tiger Woods doing? He was having sex with tons of women too. But he was doing it in a very dysfunctional way. It's not like he was married and then had one quiet FB on the side. That is cheating. I'm against cheating because I'm against lying. But at least something like that is possibly sustainable. Maybe you could pull that off For a while, maybe. Is that what he was doing? No. He was fucking woman after woman after woman after woman after woman after woman after woman. I believe the number was 35 women who reported it that we know of. It was probably 100 or more. He was a good-looking, very wealthy, super famous guy. He had no trouble getting laid. But it was dysfunctional. Not only was he doing it in a way where it was completely dishonest and completely incongruent to his lifestyle because he was married to a woman he promised monogamy to, but he was also doing it in a very shitty way. For example, I'll give you one example of the kind of thing he used to do. He would go out to dinner with his wife and his children, his kids, a family restaurant. They'd have a wonderful evening together, and then he'd be checking out the waitress. So at the end of the dinner, they would leave. They would get in the car, and he would lie to his wife. He'd say, oh, hey, I forgot my wallet. I'll be right back. She'd go, okay. He would go back into the restaurant, go up to the waitress, and get her number and say, hey, I'm Tiger Woods. Let's fuck. And she'd be like, okay. And then he'd come back out, and he'd be texting her on the way home as his wife drove home. That's shitty. No wonder that's dysfunctional. No wonder it ruined his life. No wonder his wife beat the shit out of him with a golf club and smashed up his car. That's the kind of shit you do when your notch count gets out of control. Now, did he have these problems because it was a lot of women? No. Gene Simmons had a lot of women, and he handled it more or less okay up until 2011. So it's not the number of women, it's the intensity of the activity and whether or not that activity affects your life. I wrote an article on my blogs many years ago, you can go read it, called Stop Thinking with Your Dick. And I described a very particular problem, and this is only experienced by very woman-experienced men, alpha males, players, pickup artists, guys who have sex with lots of girls. And you get into this mode, and I've been guilty of this several times in the past, where you get in this mode of, I can fuck anyone I want, I don't need any new women, but I'm going to go get new women anyway because it's fun. And why not? I can fuck anyone I want. I can fuck hot girls. Let's add some more hot girls in there because this is what I've been doing. And it's kind of, you do this robotically as a habit. Instead of, I need a new woman in my life because of X, Y, and Z, these very specific reasons. You're just thinking with your dick. When you start doing that stuff, and it starts negatively affecting the other areas of your life, if you're out on first dates or doing day game or banging your FBs when you should be working, that's a problem. Or you should be working out or losing weight, that's a problem. Or you're doing it dishonestly with other women you're with, you're not disclosing these things, or you're violating rules in terms of an OLTR, that's a fucking problem. You can't do that. So, but that's not notch count. That's being dysfunctional in terms of your woman life and your sex life. And if you want more details on that, I can certainly do a podcast on that where your sex life, your woman life becomes dysfunctional because you're doing too much, not too much notch count, but too much activity. And or you're doing it like Tiger Woods did in an incorrect way, a way that's going to cause problems and drama down the road. But it's not necessarily notch count. Hope that makes sense. That's it. I will see you in the next podcast. And again, so go to calebjones.com, click podcast to subscribe to the Sovereign CEO podcast so you get 2 podcasts a week instead of just 1 podcast a week from me. Have fun. See you soon. Bye.